with IRLP and everything. Thank you. We'll talk about how it compares with Echolink, RLP, and other things like that. And we'll get some examples of how it all connects. I'll probably talk for about half an hour, and then I can take time for questions. Got to finish an hour from now. I appreciate you guys putting me here at the beginning of the agenda because I've got people coming over here at 6 o'clock my time. It's 5 o'clock right now. Good to see Scott and I think a few other faces, people that I've talked to on the radio before. And I was talking to Dan just before this V4DRK. He couldn't come here, couldn't make it tonight, but he was hoping to watch the recording. And Dan and I, of course, talk quite often. So, okay, with all that introduction, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, let's make this work. Doo, doo, doo. Okay, that and doo, doo, doo. Almost there. Second. Uh, Okay. Okay, here we go. Just a second. We'll do the old can you see me now thing in a second. Okay, does that look like a full screen of PowerPoint?
Uh, Close.
Yeah.
We just got some video at the top of it, but that's okay. That's
Okay.
fine.
I'm trying to get rid of the people here too. There we go. Okay. Oh, almost. Okay. I think I got it. So I'm using an online version of Office, uh, and I don't normally do that, but I kind of had to today for other reasons, and so I'm going to hopefully make that work. If there's any problems, let me know. Okay, here we go. So, yes, like I said, what we'll cover is what it is, how it works, how you can use it as a repeater controller if they want to do that. Talk about the Canada Hub project. I'll talk about the equipment and cost because everybody always wonders that, like how do I get on this and use it? Some common FAQs that I get, and then any questions you guys have. So, what is AllStar and how does it work? It actually started, it's an adaptation of a voice over IP PBX software from 1999 called Asterisk. And you'll hear names like ASL and so on, and it's all Asterisk is where that comes from. But it's basically a way of bringing together nodes. Now, what are nodes? Nodes are typically repeaters or networks or sometimes individuals that are connected into the system. Those are all nodes, and they have node numbers or node IDs, and they can all connect to each other. And we'll explain that. As I mentioned, it can also be used as an inexpensive but very flexible repeater controller. I'll show you some examples of what I've done to bypass some old legacy stuff and bring in all sorts of new capabilities and remotely manage repeaters and such. It has excellent voice quality. One of the key things is that it's full mesh. And what that means, we'll explain, but basically it means that, if you got a network of things connected, if somebody joins anywhere in the network, they're connected to the whole network. It's not a case if you got a link from this point to this point to this point. So full mesh is very interesting, and you'll see how that can grow. You can make connections from your node to other ones either via DTMF, so you get on your repeater and DTMF away what you want to do, or you can use the control panel on your laptop or sometimes applications like on your phone and such to make connections. In fact, I would say the majority of people are doing that these days. And I'm sorry, I'm going to keep drinking water because I'm getting over a cold, so I don't want to lose my voice. Nodes can also be accessed using phones, laptops, and other devices, and I'll give some examples of that too. Okay, so what's typical equipment for using AllStar? Um, Typically, it's running on a single board computer like a Raspberry Pi, shown at the top there. And then you connect that to a radio interface. That can be like at the bottom, which is what they call a sharing node. It's actually a little UHF or VHF radio, low power radio, and an antenna that you just plug right in via USB. And now you've got a little simplex node that you can use, say, right in your house, a little half-watt radio. Or the middle board there is a typical radio interface. So that plugs USB into the Pi. And now you've got your PTT and COS and audio in and out connections coming from that interface. And you tap those into your repeater, kind of like we used to do with phone patches. But that gives you now a connection into the AllStar network via that board into the Pi. Now, there's also something called a hub node. A hub node is not really connected to any particular radio or user, but it's used as kind of a connection point for people to meet on. So the Canada Hub is one of those. People can connect from different repeaters around the country into the Canada Hub and talk to each other. In IRLP, there's a concept of reflectors, and that's the same idea. Or in Echolink, they call them conference servers, same idea. And some of these hubs can also bridge, excuse me, connections into other services like IRLP or Echolink or digital modes like DMR or DStar. Some of the popular ones you may have heard of is Fireside in the US, um, Freestar or Extended Freedom in the UK, and the Canada hub, of course. So let me give some examples of connections. Here's a guy, here's a repeater, we'll just say call it VE3AAA on 145.35, and it wants to connect to a UHF repeater. That UHF repeater might be co-located or quite a distance away. It's hard to know, but it can connect via AllStar to the UHF one, VE3BBB. Now we've got those two guys connected. Now there's the VA3 whoever has got a simplex node, one of those little UHF transmitters I mentioned, half watt ones at his house, and he uses it to transmit and on his handheld dials up VE3AAA. Now he's connected in to VE3AA, but remember I said it's full mesh? That means he's also connected to V3BBB. Essentially, all three nodes are now linked together as one thing. Anybody talks, they'll be heard on the other two nodes. Now there's a guy that's gone to Hawaii for his holidays, and his V3YYY, and he's using his iPhone, and he can connect into V3AA with his iPhone application because the administrator said that he's going to allow that, and so now that person's connected to everybody. He's coming into V3AA is his connection point, but again, it's all meshed in. Everybody's talking to everybody. So some more examples. You could have, as we've done at some sites, connect your 2 meter, your 220, your 440 repeaters all together. That's a popular thing to do. Once again, VA3XX is on simplex in Ontario, and he connects into AA. Now he's talking on the 220, the 440, and the 2 meter repeater at the same time. Now the Hawaii guy's now on a laptop decides to connect into the 220 repeater. Now he's connected to everything. Now I'm just giving examples. I mean, somebody would say, well, why would he connect to the 220 one when he could use the 2 meter one? It doesn't matter which he uses. It just happens to be it's on the network. So he just happens to be where he connected. I'm just showing that anywhere you connect puts you into the whole network. So that full mesh idea can really grow. So you guys have the Manitoba hub with your various repeaters doing amazing stuff, by the way. I'm really impressed with how that's come along. Um, and I think probably one of the bigger, I don't know, maybe there's some stuff in Ontario, but certainly one of the bigger networks I've seen in terms of RF repeaters connected. But you might have a bunch of repeaters around Manitoba connected into your hub, and your hub connects into the Canada hub. So now all those are connected in, and we've got a similar hub in BC with typically about 10 repeaters connected, and that's connected to the Canada hub. Then we got our guys on the right that we talked about. They're all messing around in Hawaii and wherever and connected in, but they decided to connect one of their repeaters into the Canada hub. Now they're all connected, and so on and so on. And again, on the left here, we've got people on their phones and on their simplex nodes and on their repeaters. And it doesn't matter where somebody keys up in this network, they're going to be heard by everybody else. So how do you make those connections? The way we've often done this in linking and such and networking is using DTMF, and you can do that with AllStar. Typically, unless it's been changed by your admin, then the default code is *3 followed by the node number. So 517300 is one of the Canada Hub nodes in the mesh, and you could just dial *3 517300, and you would connect in. Um, and you would disconnect by dialing *10. There you go. Now, if you have problems with some people, that decide they want to be difficult, you can change those codes and make them a little bit more unique, so they're not as easy to hack. But the other way you can do it is via your computer. There's ways to get on some networks. They have a dashboard. Dan actually just shared your one with me just so I could see what's going on there. It's really neat. But you can get on these dashboards and you can say, okay, I want to connect, in this case, my 220 repeater to the Canada hub. So I just put the node number in there and say connect, or similarly disconnect. And the Superbond dashboards are mostly used by the administrators, to be honest, to schedule things like nets, disconnects and connections and disconnections for nets. And also when you have a problem, and I would say 99% of the problems are not malicious problems. They're just somebody's got a stuck microphone, a repeater's acting up, got open squelch, something like that, or feeding back audio. And we have a network, we have a half dozen people that keep an eye on the Canada hub across the country. And then if something acts up, they're pretty quick to notice it and they just quietly disconnect it. And then when things settle down, they bring it back in. So it keeps things very orderly behind the scenes, which sometimes needs to be done. And it's surprisingly not that often. Uh, we had one repeater act funny last Sunday in our net, our Trans-Canada net. We had 200 repeaters connected, 200 nodes connected. And it was actually one of the Manitoba ones, and I disconnected it, and then Dan sent me a text said, "Oh, I saw you disconnected. We just fixed it. We're all good to go. We're back connecting back in." So there's a lot of conversation behind the scenes to keep things running smoothly. Okay, so how is this different to IRLP or Echolink? Good question. I'm glad I asked it. Okay, well, what's different? They're all good and they're all popular. And I'm not one of these people that likes to, dismiss this one or that one. It's all ways to communicate, and that's great. Um, I would say the key difference is that RLP and Echolink are really used primarily for point-to-point connections. I connect from A to B. And even though there are conference servers and even though there are reflectors in RLP, once I connect to them, nobody can connect to my node. Other people can connect to those conference servers or those reflectors, and we can talk to each other. And we can have a Canada Hub kind of thing going on and all chat to each other. But it's not full mesh, meaning, again, if I'm connected to that reflector on RLP, now my wife can't connect to my node. She'll get a kind of a busy tone. She'll say it's busy if she wants to try to connect over RLP to me on my node. And then she has to say, oh, okay, the node's not available. I wonder what he's doing, where he's connected, has to look it up and try to find a way to get a hold of me. Um, but that's probably the main difference is just the fact that it's not full mesh. With AllStar, everybody's always open to new connections, and in a way, it's kind of fun being fully meshed because it's strange. I'll get random or some seemingly random connections sometimes. Somebody from Europe or Australia will show up on one of my nodes and go, "Oh, I see you've got a 220 repeater or a 900 meg repeater. That's cool. I've got one here, and what are you using?" And they want to chat about that. Or they see I'm where I am in Vancouver, and they're like, "Oh, I was there on holidays, a few years ago. I'd like to call that guy and see if he's around and talk about that." So it's kind of it's a little bit more. I don't know. I'm a big HF fan. I just love you never know who you're gonna meet on HF kind of. It's a little bit more like that. Okay. Uh, oh yeah, I should mention all the AllStar software. It does actually support Echolink very easily. So I've set it up on the Canada Hub with my call sign, just V7NZ-L for link, and you can connect in via Echolink to our network too. It's very easy to do with AllStar software. Now, I mentioned that you can use AllStar as a repeater controller. Yes, it's very capable. You can set audio levels. You can do hang timers and timeout timers and courtesy tones. You can do voice IDs, CW IDs. You can manage multiple subaudible tones for receive and transmit. You can cross-connect things. You can add in switches, weather sensors, what's the voltage at the the batteries at the solar powered repeater site, all that stuff can be done. And this is actually my 220 repeater that I've had for gosh, almost 40 years now. It's an oldie from Pennsylvania, Spectrum Communications. But the controller was acting up after 40 years. And that's a picture of the controller board with all the wires and everything, very old school there in the middle. And I replaced that with a Raspberry Pi to get an AllStar, and that radio interface I showed earlier. And now it's not only giving me the access to AllStar, but it's doing all of the stuff that you would do to control a repeater. And what's really neat about that is if like I manage about 11 repeaters right now, and if somebody says, "Oh, can you change the ID or can you change the hang time or whatever, or the subaudible tone," I can go in and do that over the internet and make those changes. I don't have to go to site, which is really, really handy when I'm not going to complain about the weather in BC, but we do have mountain tops and some of those repeaters are not accessible in the wintertime. So, another way to set up this is if you don't have internet, because I just said you connect over the internet, but sometimes you don't have it, is you can do it via a data link. Like, I've used Arden, but I haven't. I think you guys have been doing some of that. But anyway, I haven't used Arden for this itself. But there are people here in BC that are doing this over the 3.4 gig band and using sort of a variation of HamWAN and controlling remote pies and doing that as another way to manage a site. So if you don't have internet, bring the internet to the site via the ham frequencies, and you can control your repeater again. But there's also another way, and I've got a site right now where we have a repeater. We want it to be on the network in BC here, and ultimately the Canada hub. We can't get permission from the city involved to get internet into the shack where the antenna is or where the repeater is. So I'm going to build just a simple RF link on a different band and fire the RF back to my QTH, where then I can connect that to a radio interface and a Pi. So it's basically extended the control path and the audio path of the repeater back to my house. And now I'm doing it from home. This works really well as well. You just have to watch a couple of things about hang timers and loop backs and things, but once you get it tuned up, it works really well. And again, another fun way to do a lot more of your repeater control remotely. Okay, what do you need and what does it cost? Well, we sort of mentioned what you need. You need the Raspberry Pi, and you probably need, well, you need some sort of radio interface, like the one shown in the middle there that I keep showing, the interface of repeaters are one of those Sherry nodes. If you're setting this up for a repeater, you'd need these three things: some cables, the interface, and a Raspberry Pi. And in rough numbers, you're going to come in around $200 Canadian shipped. And with the resourcefulness of hams, there's ways of getting that price down considerably. But I compare this to, okay, I was involved in IPARN, if you guys remember that back in the early 90s, late 80s. And we were spending raising money and through donations and memberships. It was $36,000 for a satellite earth station to be a node on our network. Then RLP came along, and suddenly it was, $2,000 to $3,000, which sounds like a lot now, but back then was considered a bargain to do kind of the same thing over the internet using RLP. Well, now we're getting down to $200 to the point where a lot of people just do this at home, like I've done. Okay, just gonna check to make sure you guys didn't stop hearing me after I said good evening. You're still hearing me, right?
We're still good.
Good. Okay. Hate to get to the end and there's silence, and I realize I've been talking to myself for 40 minutes, you know. Okay, good. So here's an example of the Canada Hub. Part of it sitting on my rack, various Raspberry Pis. What's this all about? Okay, well, a few of us were saying, gosh, there's just nobody on the repeaters, right? You scan around and you don't hear much except for the net or an announcement of the time, and the time is usually wrong. Um, so, what's going on? And a lot of clubs that I've been involved in, I've been put a lot of effort into building these networks and running repeaters, and then they just sit there. And you think, gosh, this is terrible. How do we get more interest? Now, I will add a note to this slide. I don't think that's on the slide, that I've thought about this a lot recently and chatted with my fellow kind of repeater admins and AllStar friends and that. And I think what we've concluded is it's not so much that people aren't interested. It's just that there's so many things you can do now. When I started out, when I was 15, whatever that was, 45 years ago, the 2 meter repeaters were it. And if somebody got on UHF, that was pretty exotic. They didn't have anybody they could talk to, right? Now you've got activity, and for $60 you can get a Chinese handheld that'll do 2 meters, 220, 440, and out here we're even doing 900 and 1.2 gigs as well. Then you've got DMR and D-Star and X25 or P25 and NXDN. All these modes that people are using, and it's basically what it's done is it's spread the activity, which I think has actually increased, but over a lot of areas. But anyway, back to the original concept was like, how can we make things a little more active so that the equipment gets used, people get to meet each other, more ideas get exchanged, so on. And that was the idea, because one of the problems I work very hard to try to bring new hams into the hobby, and one of the problems is that a lot of them get their license, buy a handheld, load in all the repeaters from repeater books, scan around, don't hear anything, and they get discouraged. So again, we want to get lots of activity. One of the other problems we found is that, and this is not directed at you guys at all, because I really don't know much about your activities other than they seem quite what I've seen through Dan, that quite impressive. But a lot of clubs in the country, to be honest, spend a lot of time in meetings and not enough doing. And what happens is somebody says, "Hey, our repeater's hardly ever used. How about we add AllStar to it so we can talk to some other places?" And then you get a lot of I'm not sure about that. We need to think about this. We need to think about that. And then nothing happens, or it takes so long that the person that wants to do it just goes out and spends a little money on a Sherry node, and for 150 bucks or something, they're up and running, and they just do it on their own, which doesn't help in a way. I mean, it doesn't help the club repeater get busy. So anyway, there we go. I don't want to beat it to death, but I worry sometimes that with this fragmentation and with this lack of activity, we risk of losing our club members, risk of losing our spectrum. So the Canada Hub was kind of an idea to help address this. Um, I mentioned I was involved in IPARN back in the day, the Interprovincial Amateur Radio Network. We did it all via satellite, and I kind of thought, gosh, we should be able to do this for much less now and really get a lot of activity going on. And that's what we did. So how would I describe the Canada Hub? It's a place for hams across the country to connect and share ideas, carry on nets, and so on. It's a meeting place. And we do have repeaters full time, or at least on a scheduled basis in many cases, that join from St. John's to Vancouver Island, north to Whitehorse and Yellowknife. And we also have people from outside that join. Now, I get a lot of requests to carry a lot of international nets and stuff, and we do carry a few of those. But I'm trying not to let that dominate. I want it to have a Canadian focus, and so it's something different. So it's something Canadian, and we welcome the international people, and some of them are connected to us full time. But I don't want it to be just another extension of a big US network. Okay, I mentioned AllStar. Yep, that's the main backbone. But you can also access it via RLP Echolink, uh, DRM. That's supposed to say DMR. I had a funny moment. DMR, and of course all those laptop and phone like clients. And I think importantly, we're not affiliated with any club. We say we're part of the North Fraser Amateur Radio Club. That was a club we put together as a bit of a fun thing. That's just a bunch of us that are doing this. It's not really a club. We don't have any meetings unless somebody brings the beer, and we don't take any funds from anybody. So it's a lot of the investment in this has been just done by me and VA7SL and a couple others that wanted to get together and give back a little bit to the hobby. So yes, no meetings, no policies, no politics. Okay, what does the hub look like? What does the network look like? Still time check. Oh yeah, we're doing good. Okay. So the Canada hub is not one hub actually, it's a collection of hubs. And the reason is for redundancy and reliability, availability, all those kind of good things. So we have four main nodes that make up the system. Um, TCH East and West. And that was so TCH East sits at my dad's place, V7 TGX. And I sort of say to people east of Manitoba, you guys connect into there. And the international people, you connect into there. And then West is Manitoba West and the North. Now, this is not a hard and fast rule. I really don't care that much about this. People connect into all sorts of, they don't always follow this. That's fine. Just a general guideline. We're trying to share the load around a bit. But the idea is that by having one node at a different location on a different ISP than mine, but otherwise connected, then if we have an outage in one, which we get from time to time, you can use the other one. And we've also got, backup power and all that kind of good stuff. So availability is really, really high. I don't think there's ever been a case where the entire system, since we first got the bugs out of it in the first few months, the entire system has been down. And at my place, I've got the rack that you saw on the other slide. So I've got the West node and a node dedicated to Echolink and things like non-RF clients like phones and so on. And then I've got another node that's connected to DMR and RLP talk groups or reflectors. So again, kind of done to sort of break things up a bit. If we have a catastrophic issue with, I don't know, IRLP, we can just drop that node off and it won't cause harm to the rest of the network. Here's an example of our dashboard, and you guys can see our dashboard. If you go to our website's thecanadahub.ca, it's not particularly sexy, but it's functional. It's there to show you how to use it and what's going on. And one of the things is you can click on a link. You can click on a link to listen to the activity. You can click on a link to see if there's nodes up or down, if everything's okay, sort of a health status. You can also click on a link to see the dashboard, and the dashboard shows this kind of stuff. It shows you for every node that's is up and running, who's connected to it, and you can kind of see who talked from where last, and so on. Now, I said it was full mesh. This is what they call a bubble chart. This is also available off the dashboard. You can't even see this unless you zoom in, but it shows all the nodes and who's connected to who. So again, in this slide, this is one during one of our Canada nets where we get 200 plus nodes connected every Sunday. Anybody could connect to any one of these points and be part of the network. Now, sensibly, if they want to be part of the Manitoba hub, they'd connect to you guys. If you know that's the main place they want to be after you guys disconnect from us, or if they want to stay on the Canada hub, they can connect right into us. But the point is again that anybody connects to anybody, and they'll be part of the whole network. So it gets really busy, but it's surprisingly manageable even when this happens. How active is it? So we started in May 2020. It's kind of a COVID project, to be honest. We had a little bit of time on our hands. It's been growing fairly well. Um, but I joke that the daytime average is probably 1 QSO per hour. And sometimes you can listen for several hours to hear nothing. And you've got, when we haven't got a net going on, we've still got like, 40 repeaters connected around the country and maybe some from overseas or the US. And still, 1 QSO per hour. And the reason I make this point is 1 QSO an hour is a lot more than our local repeaters were getting before we did this. But it's also like a lot of people say they want to join the network, but they're worried their club repeater is going to be swamped with traffic and be way too busy. I'm like, it's never happened. It just doesn't happen. You'll get more activity, but you won't be too busy. But you know what? If you connect and you don't like it, or there's times when you don't want to connect because it's too busy with nets you don't want to be part of, whatever, you can turn all that on and off. You can do it manually, or you can schedule it. So you really have complete control over what you do. It doesn't really change anything. It's all optional. So I always say to people, people get on there and they go, "Oh, we better not tie up the network. There's a lot of repeaters connected, better go." I'm like, "No, keep chatting." I mean, if somebody drones on for 2 or 3 hours, maybe, but that's never happened. It's just people chat for have a QSO and off they go. So I mentioned we have some nets. These are all on our website at thecanonhub.ca. We have the TransCanada one on Sundays. That's at noon your time, goes for an hour to hour and a half. We started this thing about it's kind of funny. Scott and I were talking. We're like, how can we make the nets more interesting? I said, QST used to publish this survey at the back of the magazine, and they'd interview people saying, do you use Morse code? And then like next, for example, and then the next month they'd publish a pie chart of what the responses were and ask another question. I said, why don't we do something like that on the net? That'd be really neat. And that idea 6 years ago, pretty much every net I listen to worldwide now does that. It's spread like wildfire, and I think it's really cool because it's a great way to stimulate activity. I think last week's was, talking about what are your plans for Thanksgiving, but the weekend before that was, what's on your Christmas list for radio gear? What would you love to see under the tree? So all sorts of fun stuff. You learn a little bit about each other. There's a new hams net led out of the UK. I'm looking for probably one more new hams net to be scheduled because I think that's really important. The Sounds Good one on Mondays, that's run by Chris, V3RWJ. Very interesting stuff about music and audio. I think some of you guys have joined that on occasion. The Absolute Tech Net on Tuesdays, that's happening as we speak. Um, Troudette's a Prescott Russell club in Ontario. It's funny, they have a little club of, I don't know, maybe 40 members or something, and they decided, well, we'll run our net on the Canada Hub if you don't mind, and we're quite happy to have some guest check-ins. And the weird thing is, they even had a guy from Texas join their club and runs their net sometimes now because he enjoys chatting to those guys. So that was kind of fun. Top Talk's kind of a topical interview with lots of YouTubers and ham experts and people about different things. And then the Science Net on Saturday evenings starts at 8 o'clock your time. And that's kind of a neat thing. Runs for a couple of hours, very popular. Okay, so what are some of the concerns I get? I mentioned this one already. I won't beat it to death, but oh gosh, our repeater's going to be busy 24/7 and all these people. And I have to admit, I think in some ways we got off to a slightly bad foot with you guys right at the beginning. I talked to Dan about this because shortly after we started the project, we partnered up with some of the guys in the UK with the Freestar network. But what did happen was their network was busy with local UK conversations for many hours at a time. So that was the one case where it kind of did happen. And you guys disconnected, and then I said, look, I don't want other people to disconnect because of this. And this really wasn't the idea. It was supposed to be a Canadian focus. I just wanted a bit more activity, but now it's getting a bit out of balance. So we still connect to the Freestar guys about 3 times a week for different nets, but we're not connected to them to the UK 24/7. Will we lose control of repeater? Nope, you can control everything. Do you decide what you do and when you do it and why you do it? What if you have an emergency? Two things about this. One is you can take your network off or your repeater off and deal with that emergency locally if that's what is best. We had one case where there was a problem. Somebody put out a call here, and it was very early in the morning, West Coast time. Nobody heard it, but somebody in Ontario heard it, where they were already up, and they made the call to the 911 guys or whatever, and got help. So in some ways, having a repeater on the network, especially in the middle of the night, I think is a very good idea if it's got, connected to people that are awake. Um, what about unlicensed users using some of these non-radio things like laptops and phones? We haven't had the problem, to be honest, but it's easy to fix. We can change passwords. So I have if you want to connect using a laptop or iPhone or an Android phone, shoot me an email, v7nz@myrec.ca. I'll send you a document that shows you the where to get the different clients, what they cost, if they cost anything. Many don't. Some of the really good ones cost like $10 or $20, but most of them are free. And in that, I'll give you the password and go ahead and use it. But then you can do it. And so as long as you're licensed, I don't really have a problem with this. I mean, I like radio. We all like radio and that, but sometimes I'm out. I don't have a radio with me, or I'm traveling overseas. I don't have a radio with me, but I want to listen to the network for a bit. So I'll use my iPhone on Wi-Fi and check into a net and say hi to my friends. I mentioned stuck mics and such. We can deal with that. We got people monitoring and just like you guys do, it does a great job. Is this real ham radio? Absolutely not, according to this guy. No, I joke. I mean, I don't hear this as much as I used to, but I've been hearing it my whole time as a ham with every digital mode, with every, with even when repeaters came around, when the internet started being used with transporting audio between uh, systems, whether it was data or voice, all these things. I figure as long as people are experimenting, they're learning, they're communicating and sharing ideas and friendships, and there's radio involved somewhere in that bundle, great. Okay, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I'll just give you this really quickly because I often get asked these questions. Do you need to replace your repeater controller? No, you don't. You can use the existing one. Do you need a lot of bandwidth? No, you don't. Less than 100 kilobits per second per connection. Um, Things like, as I mentioned, HamWAN, ARD, and so on would all be suitable for this. What operating system does AllStar use? Arch Linux. And do you need to know much about Linux? Not really. Much of the installation is kind of steps you through menus with English-like scripts, and then so you follow the steps. And editing the files, there's ways to do that easily. And the editing the files is just like editing things like your repeater ID and your timeout timer and things like that. All very English-like script files. There's two versions of software. There's AllStar Link, ASL, and HamVoIP. And people ask me what's the difference. ASL is the original. It's the open source stuff. If you want to get in and program and contribute, that's great. Ham VoIP is not. They took the open source and packaged it for sort of easy use for the ham community. It's well supported. It's stable. Now, this is one of these political things where there's a lot of debates between these two groups and a lot of unhappiness. But at the end of the day, I've used both. Um, at the time when we started the project, ASL was not working well with large networks. So as soon as you got into the 150 plus connections, it would crash. Apparently, they fixed that now, which is great. But that's why I switched to HamVoIP at the time. And I was talking to Dan this week, and he said the new version of ASL is in his mind superior and very good. But anyway, bottom line is there's two places to go, and there's lots of online community help. If you need, there's groups.io stuff, and people like me are always happy to jump in and help people. Quite often, I connect into nodes around the country remotely, and because something's not working for somebody, and I find a typo or some other issue, and we fix it. So there you go. So let's make things busy. You guys are already doing a good job on this. Join the Canada Hub whenever you can. Say hello. Uh, get busy. We're happy to help with kits, installations, ideas, technical support, all that stuff. Give it a try and see where that goes. So I think that's it. There we go. Ready for questions.
Okay, I'm gonna turn on the lights here, so everyone shield your eyes to start with.
Put your clothes back on.
Okay. Um, Anybody have any questions of Adrian? Start with. Okay, Adrian, I got a couple of them. First of all, yeah, we've been running our network sort of as our own little private little network for Manitoba. We
Yep.
started off that way. Our intention is to set up one repeater here in the city of Winnipeg that can be open and used to connect everything else. So people can connect to wherever they want. But we want to wait until our network was stable and we had some versions running ham VoIP, some versions running ASL, one of the earlier versions, some running a different version. And now we're standardizing on version 3.0
Good.
because we like the codecs in it. The codecs are really good, good telephone quality codecs, and it sounds really good. So once we're sure our network is good and stable, and we're still having some troubles, as you know from last Sunday, we had one repeater that's now suddenly decided to start generating noise for some unknown reason. Nothing's changed on it, but something at the site must have happened. So yeah, you dropped off the network. That was good. Dan dropped it off of our network and then reconnected our main hub back to you again. So that's good. So we will be setting up one in the city of Winnipeg, and that is going to be the VE4WRS repeater in Winnipeg. And then it'll be available for anybody to connect to. Our hubs, we have one hub set up for remote users, people running hotspots or whatever to connect to. We don't want people connecting to our individual repeaters necessarily in Winnipeg, or our other hubs, the Manitoba hub and the Winnipeg hub. But that's the way we're currently going to set up. But we will set up one that people will be able to connect to. And I'm hoping as soon as the tech guys tell me it's stable enough that we can start doing that, then we're going to write a script to connect that one repeater back into our main hub so it can connect up to the hub in time for our nets as well as the Trans-Canada net. So that's what we're going to do in Manitoba anyhow. And once this repeater is available, then people can connect to it to the Trans-Canada hub, or we'll leave it connected to it all the time, except for when our nets come up, and
Hmm.
see how it goes from there. We haven't decided yet. We have some repeaters that are ours outside the city of Winnipeg, around the areas around Winnipeg, and then other ones that belong to other clubs. Some of the clubs like to leave their radios on 24/7 in case somebody in the area has an emergency, so they can talk to somebody and get help. Obviously, as you mentioned, somebody was awake in Ontario and caught something that was early in the morning BC time, which is good. I'm glad that hams are helping hams and things like that. But some of the clubs want to keep, they don't want all this traffic on it, as you mentioned. That was our concern at the beginning. And we did connect you at the beginning, then we disconnected, then only connected up at times with a cron job to start it up at the right time for the Trans-Canada net. So we'll see how things go, but we want to set up one, and like I said, maybe we'll connect it up to the Trans-Canada net, and that'll be up to our users here to decide. And if the people who are running the other repeaters out in the country in the rural areas, I mean, they can do what they want. Right now, they're staying connected to the Manitoba hub, but they're more than welcome to do whatever they want. We're not telling them what to do. We're just providing them the Manitoba hub to start with, and they can go wherever they need to connect to. We have put restrictions on our repeaters and our hubs so that people can't randomly connect to them. We want them to connect to that one hub that we have for that purpose. But we will open up the WRS repeater once we set it aside for people to connect to. So those are our plans for future. We're still trying to iron out all of our kinks and problems that we have, but yeah, it's going.
Sounds good. Yeah, I mean, what I would say from my side, two things. Good communication between us is always important. I think if there's something that we're doing that you guys aren't enjoying or liking, just talk to me. Or if there's something you think you might want to try, feel free to talk to me too. Like I'm trying not to, there's a bit of a habit on some of the networks to make them kind of like just a network of nets, and they connect to every net that's going on all day long, all evening long, and it's just nonstop. And it's like I can hear the same net on so many different places, and I kind of go, okay, I don't really want to do that because I also would like to have the frequencies clear for people just to meet and chat, as we tend to do from time to time without it always being busy with nets. But I sort of informally thought, well, I think what would be good is one net a day, weekdays, and maybe two on the weekends. Maybe there's a daytime one and an evening one or something. And we've got, I think, 2 days, two or three slots in that schedule that aren't used right now. And the reason I'm mentioning is if you guys pull together something that's not a regional sort of thing, if somebody's running a net of, I don't know, something that hams are into like 4x4ing or something, like doing backwoods stuff or something, somebody wants to do that. Says that's what I'm going to do that net like that. And there's, four or five of us interested in that here, but we bet there's a lot of people, there's probably another 10 across the country that are really into it. Could we do a net like that on the Canada Hub? I'm all ears for that. I'd be interested to hear that. So I just throw that out there as a thought. If you want to expand the scope of something that you're looking to do that's going to have a special interest within the hobby, we're a good vehicle for that.
Okay, great. Anybody have any questions? Anybody online have any questions?
I
Yeah,
have a
I do.
question.
Hey, Doug.
Hey, Adrian, how are you?
Good, good. One of our regulars.
Are you feeling better?
Man, I still have an ear infection. It's messing up my CW, I tell you. But I'm feeling better. Doug knows this. Our family, we had COVID whipped through the family, one person after the other, and it seemed like for a month everybody was sick. And I'm not COVID positive anymore, but I've had no hearing in my right ear now for a week. So we'll get there eventually.
Good. So just a quick comment. So Ham VoIP is Arch, but ASL is Debian, right?
Oh, okay.
So
Yep.
yeah, so just so people know that.
Good point.
Um, do you has something changed since you presented to Quark 3 years ago about the FM voice link? Because at that time, I think we were talking about that, and there was some question or some capability that may not have been available to allow for that to happen.
Uh, I don't think so. What often happens when people want to link to bring in a repeater where they can't put the Raspberry Pi out at the site is they just do it without thinking about the fact that there's a tail on the repeater and that'll feed back into the network and you get into this kind of ping pong situation that's very difficult for the rest of us on the network. Um, that's the only thing. So sometimes people set up a remote thing and then I have to call them and say, look, you need to adjust your timers so that this is pleasant for everybody. That's all I can think. I don't think anything's changed in the software.
Okay, very good. Um, and what's your position on full-time connection to the Canada Hub?
The more the better.
Oh,
It doesn't bother me one bit. I mean, it's as I said, I probably, if I was to look right now, well, right now I think there's a net going on, so there's probably 189, 190 repeaters connected or nodes
yeah.
connected, but most of the time there's about 40.
Hmm.
And like I said, we might get one QSO per hour. I mean, if we got to the point where there was, three or four QSOs per hour, I think that'd be quite nice.
Good. Okay. I might, I have 3 nodes. I might work with the club to connect one full time and publicize it here and see if
Sure,
we can get some action going here.
that'd be great.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I see Jordan has his hand raised. Jordan, go ahead.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. So thank you so much, Adrian, and thanks for Radio Amateurs in Manitoba for hosting this. Adrian, you mentioned in passing that there was a risk of losing, presumably the amateur spectrum allocation. And I wanted to ask, is that like a near future reality with ISED, or is there maybe a threat I'm unaware of, or is that just kind of something that we should be thinking about?
It's a general comment that commercial interests frequently apply to use our spectrum. And in many cases, we are secondary users of that spectrum, so they have a priority. But there is some attempts through ISED and through the IRU to try to coordinate that in a way that's not going to cause problems for each other. Just in the last few years, there's been proposals that came up for uh, 1.2 gigs. There was a proposal from AST Space Mobile, who are looking to provide came up in just recently. They're looking to provide a Starlink-like service, but that includes voice and data. And they wanted to control and get telemetry from their satellites over our 440 meg band. And this would be messy, very messy, because it's one thing if, certain industries use in certain areas low power transmitters to send some data, from a dam to tell you the water level or something. But if you've suddenly got hundreds of satellites orbiting, blipping data out onto the ham bands, it's going to make them almost unusable. So the point is, if we're not using those bands, then it's pretty hard for RAC and people like that They can keep saying, we don't take our spectrum away, but if the commercial interests say, but nobody's using it, it's just sitting there, it's valuable, and nobody's using it. That's the problem. So I'm making a generic comment. I'm not talking about specific threats, but if we have activity on our bands, we have a much better chance of preserving them. And if we, and I'll say this as well. One of the things that I do when I'm talking to my neighbors about my second antenna tower I put up or anything, I always talk about the emergency aspect of amateur radio, that we are an emergency communications service. It's one of the, key tenets of amateur radio. And I think this is important because people can relate to that. They can see a benefit in that. It's not a bunch of whatever they might conceive as ham operators being, you know, the amateur hobbyist kind of thing doesn't resonate as well when it comes to competition for spectrum and antenna towers on the street and all these things. But when you're talking about emergency communications and when you're active in these things, I think you have a much better chance of defending the spectrum.
Yeah,
So
thank you so much
it's a
for that.
very long
Yeah,
answer, sorry.
no, that was great and really good points. I should have mentioned to him a new ham, but I'm very interested in the history of telecommunications, especially in northern Manitoba, and I've learned so much being an amateur radio operator and looking at spectrum allocation. So yeah, it's just part of, I think, of Canada's history, and it's a shame that it's kind of a use it or lose it kind of scenario. But anyway, I'm active and I'm really enjoying it.
We're doing okay. I don't want to send the wrong message. We've done a pretty good job actually, and in many ways we've got new spectrum allocations since I've been a ham, which has been wonderful. And equipment is becoming more affordable and usable for bands that we would never dream of using when I was starting out, like, the gigahertz bands and stuff. So there's lots going on. There's lots of use happening. I just think it's important, especially, bands like 2 meters and 440. These are very coveted bits of spectrum. So yes, we need to use those.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else online have questions? Okay, so Radio Arms of Manitoba has, for some of our repeaters, we link them via microwave, which Adrian showed. So we're doing that on 5.8 gigahertz and 24 gigahertz. The 5.8 gigahertz, we are losing pieces of that from the last IA or IRU, or the International Telecommunication ITU. Has given that over to wireless internet providers. They can use pieces of it, and they're encroaching even more into the area that was sort of set aside for amateur radio, even as a secondary user. Licensed users always have priority, but some of these wireless internet providers don't need a license. They can go in, and they're not to cause interference to anybody that is using it, but they are, and doing their thing on it. So we need to watch and protect our spectrum as best we can. But we are running a few microwave links around Winnipeg. All of the repeaters in Winnipeg are on a microwave link. We send a microwave link from Winnipeg to Selkirk, Selkirk to Milner Ridge, Milner Ridge to Pinawa. We're hoping to get Pinawa online. Well, we're hoping to get it on this fall. I don't know if we're going to. We got to get a tower climber out there and do some work and get everything scheduled is part of the problem. And then we also are using a RF link, as Adrian also showed, and we're doing that from Milner Ridge to Falcon Lake is an RF link. We're doing an RF link from a little town called Prada over to the Haddishville repeater because we can't get internet into that site. So we're doing it from a borrowed internet connection at a friend of amateur radio site. He's not a ham yet, but I'm trying to twist his arm some more. We are going to do an RF link out to the MAN repeater from St. James and another one to Morris repeater from St. James. So those would be the RF links, and they'll be controllable through the network. So if there's a noise coming across, we can turn off just that one link if we need to. So those are the ways we're doing things and trying to use our spectrum as best we can. There's a possibility of going into other amateur bands in the gigahertz to get things. It's just a matter of getting equipment at a reasonable price to get these microwave links going. There's also some RF data modules you can get that run on 440, but they use a big amount of bandwidth, which we really don't want to use because we don't want to tie up the 440 band with just data, at least in the data area of just our stuff. So we want to make it available to everybody. So as Adrian said, use it or lose it sort of thing. So we want to make sure we can keep it as long as we can. But that's how our network's currently set up, and you can go and do that bubble chart. You can go log on to the AllStar network or go onto our dashboard, or even from our website. You can go to the status pages on our website, and there's a bubble chart link there. You can go to the dashboard that's on our website and see everything that's connected and which repeater is actually active at the time. So you can see if somebody's talking, you know which repeater they're using, whether they're in Winnipeg or Brandon or Dauphin or wherever they may be. So check the website, look under repeaters, and look at status and dashboard, those two pages in particular. And that'll help you understand the network. And if you blow out the bubble chart, you can see what's connected in our network. And if you blow it out on a net, on Sunday net, when it's connected to TransCanada net, you'll get that huge thing that is so many repeaters, you just won't be able to read it all because there's so many on that page. But please check it out. Anything else from anybody? No? Anybody online? Any other questions? Adrian, thank you very much for giving us a talk today. Hopefully that helps some of our users understand how the network works a little bit.
Yep.
And we do appreciate it.
Well, you're most welcome. And again, I really appreciate you guys have done some of the best networking. The way you just laid it out, actually, you described it. You've done some of the best networking I've seen in the country as far as bringing repeaters together and making use of the spectrum and the different bands to do that. I think it's really, really impressive and commendable. So thanks. Well done, guys.
It's been a 10-year project that started with an idea and it just blew out of hand. But
Yeah.
now we got network and smart people that know things about Linux and how to do things. So it's helping. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, guys. 7-3. See you again.
Okay, I'm gonna keep the link open here, the Zoom presentation open for people that want to just talk and chat and anything else going on while we just talk here for a little bit. Quick announcements. There is a jamboree on the air this weekend on Saturday, Sunday happening. There is 2 scout troops going out to Assiniboine Park, setting up there. A couple of hams have said they will help out there. Hopefully they're going to set up a portable HF station and or VHF stations and talk to other troops. This club is having 1 troop coming in on Sunday. We're still trying to get them to Thursday on Saturday. We're trying to get them coming in Sunday or Saturday morning. So that we have the rest of the day afterwards. They want to do a 10 till 4. We're suggesting at 9 till 1. So we're going to compromise somewhere in the middle there. I don't know what time the guys at Assiniboine Park are going to be on the air yet. But I hope to get in touch with them beforehand so that we know and get scouts talking to each other. This is the first time in my lifetime as a ham that we've actually had scouts on the air in Manitoba. They sort of stopped doing it after a while and wanted background checks and security checks of anybody involved with scouts, and they sort of eased off on that a little bit now. As long as there are people around from the troop and parents, then it's okay. We've had guides in this place. Guides on the air have never been a problem, but scouts on the air has always been a problem, and they just would not talk to anybody, any hand groups for years. And then suddenly this year they came to us from 2 different angles and caught me a little bit off by surprise, because one inquired and then I never heard anything from them, and somebody else inquired and then I didn't hear anything from them. Then they both came back saying, okay, we both want to do this now. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I already agreed, but I agreed to both of you sort of. So we have arrangements. So WSC is doing one, RAM is doing another one at Assiniboine Park, or RAM initiated, let's say that way. So if you're on the air, or if you're at Assiniboine Park, it's a decent day on Saturday, track them down somewhere, see if you can help out or at least talk to them. The idea is that they talk from one troop to another troop, so the kids are talking to each other. But if they can't raise anybody and you hear them calling and nobody's answering, please answer them back and give them a chat, get them interested in radio, and maybe we'll turn them into a ham in the future. Next month is
Nolan,
Nolan will be talking about what?
meters.
Meters, digital voltmeters, how to use them correctly, not just to check continuity, which is what I typically do with mine most of the time, just to make sure that something is still connected. But to actually check voltage, amperage, transistors, maybe things like that. He's an electrician. He knows how to do all that stuff. And is Jeff still doing his thing?
I don't know, I can't get a hold of him.
Okay, I'll try to get a hold. Jeff B4AE is going to be talking about sudden incident disturbance. The sun just unleashed a huge CME today while it was directly facing Earth, so it will be coming at us in the next couple days. So it will affect the Jamboree on the air, unfortunately. But Jeff has a piece of software that he's running. We're running it here for a long time. It's just a giant loop, and it monitors low frequency, 136 kilohertz. And when the CME happens, it actually affects. So this is the satellite submarine band, which is all encrypted. You can't hear them anyhow, but it affects that band, and it will actually cause a disturbance in the ionosphere at that frequency, and you can detect it. So you're looking at normal bandwidth things happening, and all of a sudden there's a giant spike when that happens, when the CME happens. And that just shows up on there, and then we send that file every day. We send it to NASA, and they do their thing, saying there is a CME happening, in case they didn't detect it first. But there's these stations all over the world that are doing this, and WSC is one of them. Jeff currently has it out at his cabin at Lake of the Woods, where he spent the summer. Should be coming back soon, but he'll be doing a talk on that, as well as the GEOS weather satellite that exists until Donald Trump takes them off the air. Perfectly good ones just launched, and he wants to shut down. Another story. So he's going to be talking about that, how amateurs can use these satellites to get your own weather maps. If you want, if you're into weather stuff, you can download a weather map from the satellite direct, just like the weather office does, and things like that. You can see satellite images, other things. So he'll be talking a little bit about that as well. So there'll be the double presentation on next month on our regular scheduled meeting. The
10th, I think it is.
Yeah, the second Monday of every month.
Yeah.
I gotta get that right. So that's November. December will be our Christmas party. A couple of people have already committed to it, and please sign up if you want to attend. It'll be at the Marigold, and it was gonna be $29.95 or something like that. We lowered it down to
25.
it's $25. We're dropping it down to $15. The club is sponsoring $10 for every meal that or person that shows up. So
Mule
is that right?
is $25 a person.
Oh, $25 all in.
Yeah.
That's already with the discount. Sorry, it was $35 all in. So it's $29 plus taxes plus tip was $35. We're getting it down to 25. That's that now I'm correct on that. So if you want some good Chinese food and socialize in amateur radio, Marigold on Osborne on a regular meeting day, the second Monday in December. We've got things lined up for January, February, March, and April, I think. It's been in the newsletter, and we're still waiting for May and June. So if anybody has any ideas on something they want, please let anybody in our executive or send an email to our info address on a topic that you'd like to see, or maybe you want to present. That's it. Anybody online have any questions? Nope. Silence. Well, I should stop this recording. How the hell do I do that? There.